It is my privilege to introduce the Honorable Kevin Brady. Brother Brady is an initiate of Alpha Gamma Zeta at University of South Dakota, where he graduated with a degree in mass communications. Before becoming a public servant, Brother Brady spent his career helping small businesses and enterprises through the Chamber of Commerce, and he was elected to the Texas legislature in 1990, and then to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1996, where he served his country and his constituents for 26 years. Brother Brady became the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. And let me just put that in perspective for you. Who in this room is either a Haitah or has been a Haitah? Okay, much of the room. You know how hard it is to build a budget to make your chapter brothers happy and end the year with some money in the bank. Well, Brother Brady was responsible for the budget of the United States of America. So he's got much that he can teach us. Before he became one of the most accomplished brothers in the history of our fraternity, he was a college student. He was a man just like you, looking to find his way, looking to find his place to belong, and looking for the skills to build a life. And so today we get to learn from him. And I want you to please give him a warm brotherly welcome, Congressman Kevin Brady. So, Brother Brady, I have the coolest job in America. I get to travel all over the country and meet amazing men, and I get to hear their story. And I get to hear what made them decide that they wanted to be great. And it almost always goes back to, there was this place in my life where I had a hole, and I found this thing called Lambda Chi Alpha. So I'd love to hear your story. Who were you when you walked on campus, and what were you looking for, and what did you find?
So first, thanks for having me here to the assembly, and great to see the University of South Dakota Alpha Gamma Zeta team around. So proud of you. And I'm proud, too, of the whole organization, national and all the chapters, because at a time when it's been tough for many organizations to even keep their members, Lambda Chi Alpha is growing. You know, and when a lot of fraternities are struggling to connect with young men, you are providing them skills that'll be successful, not just in school, but in their life. And I think, too, for all the alumni who are here today, you know, I think your effort to really start to recruit and train more of us to reconnect with the chapter, you probably think that's good for the chapter. I think it's great for us to reconnect. So thanks for your leadership, everyone here today. So I grew up in the Black Hills of South Dakota, beautiful place to grow up. Really involved in sports and student government in high school. Went to the University of South Dakota where my dad went, and 4 of my 5 brothers and sisters. And then I can tell you about my life after that. But, you know, every family faces challenges. And so we got ours pretty early. So when I was 12, my dad, who was an attorney, took on a tough case for the church. And it was to get an elderly woman out of a marriage from a really abusive husband who was unstable. And so this husband, you know, threatened to kill Dad, threatened to kill his family. My mom learned to use a gun. He used to come in front of our home, drive back and forth on Sunday nights, and basically threatened us. Unfortunately, when the trial began, he followed through on his threat. So shooting and killing my dad, his wife, and then the judge as well, who thankfully lived. But here we were, I was 12 years old, and I got the news. I was in football practice, 7th grade, in a huddle. The coach taps me on my shoulder, points to a sheriff's deputy and says, "You need to go with him." So that's how we all learned about this. And so, you know, that's a tough situation where it kind of changes your life. But think about this. We had this blessing in my mom. She's in her mid-30s. All of a sudden, she's got 5 children raised by herself. And she doesn't miss a beat. I mean, she gave us an amazing childhood. Oldest brother was 14, little one 3. all of us, was at every game, every activity. She was both parents to us and really taught us lessons of 4 lessons, really. 1, be independent, so think for yourself. Be optimistic. There's a lot to look forward in life. Have faith in God. He's got a plan. Don't worry so much about the day-to-day things. Just work, do your job. He's got a plan. And the final thing was, give back to the community in which you live. And so I was really blessed to have a mom who, could instill all that in us and be both parents at once. But which is why I loved athletics, I love sports, I love all that, student government, all that. But I tell you, Lambda Chi at the University of South Dakota was really, as I look back on it, was really a key moment in my life. We were fortunate. It was a very good chapter led by very good people. It lifted your expectations. You weren't there just for college. You were part of something bigger than that. The role models we had and the role models you are in your own chapter make a huge difference to a student working their way through school who become role models themselves, for the other brothers going forward. And then just the lifelong friendships, those enduring friendships from Lambda Chi still exist today. And I can tell you a little about that, but our group, have stayed connected. We used to meet every 2 years together as brothers to share and to be part of each other's lives. Then it was every year. Now it's our wives and spouses. And while at the beginning was all about the good old college days, it has grown into our faith and our challenges and all that. So yeah, Lambda Chi has had a huge impact on my life, which is why I think having these young leaders here today, you have an opportunity to do the exact same thing that helped change my life to other young men as well.
So you've made a career in public service, which for many of us is probably a mystery. I know for me it's a mystery. What does one do to try to better the community? I'd love to know why. What caused you to say, this is where I'm going to take my life? And was there anything you learned from Lambda Chi or from a Lambda Chi that helped you do that job well?
Well, I think 2 things. One, I think we're shaped by our family in a big way. So we were in a family that was just genetically involved in the community. From my dad, my mom, uncles, everyone was involved in the community in some way. And so we were just raised to be involved in everything. The church, Boy Scout, it didn't matter. We were all involved in. And then you come to school, and here was Lambda Chi, which was basically inviting you to be part of something bigger. You know what I mean? Whether it's within Lambda Chi chapter, the school, charitable organizations, donating your time, your resources, all of that. And it really sort of accelerated what I'd already been doing back home. My family gave me and a lot of others an opportunity to learn to serve more. They raised the expectations of how you should act and how you give back to your community in a big way. And I think those were not just skills that I learned, but I think set the tone for being involved in the Chamber of Commerce originally, then later the Texas House, and then Congress. Those lessons are still with me today.
So you rose through the ranks and became a leader in Congress, and you had to then try to get things done through other elected officials. And almost everybody in this room is a leader, and many of them, it's the first time they've had to lead their peers. It's the first time they've had to make choices that would make them unpopular. How did you, or what leadership tools or tricks did you use to try to get good work done through others while you were in Congress?
So I was fortunate early on. I got a pretty good sense of how you serve. And I think for some people in elected office, they've sort of got the people here and they're up here. And the higher they go in office, the higher they go there. My organization chart was always flipped. My belief was that everyone in my district, 800,000 people, were here, and I was below. And my job, I was literally below them, my job to lift them up, to serve them. And the higher I went in public office, like Chairman of Ways and Means, all that meant is I had more people that I needed to serve and lift up. That made a big difference in how I viewed everything, looking at as a campaign. The other thing is, I recognized that I got hired for 2 years at a time. No guarantee I was getting hired again. So I knew I'd stay close to the people I represented. So I didn't move to Washington, commuted almost every week for 26 years. So I think I was on my 6th round trip to the moon, commuting back and forth over the years, kept me close to, I did a lot of town halls, stayed very accessible because look, people are going to disagree with you. They just are. But if you're out there inviting them to peel the bark off you when they're angry or be pleased in other situations, I think, they understand if you're accountable to them in a big way. And the other thing is, people aren't going to agree with everything you do, certainly not your positions. If they know you care, if you know you are accessible for them to tell them, it makes a huge difference. So yeah, 2-year terms, you're running all the time. There's just no weekends off. You've got to stay close. But I think it's a good thing because you stay very close to your neighbors, the communities that you work for.
So you and I were talking when you first came in, and you were telling me what it's actually like to be in Congress, and that most people in Congress are working hard. And that reminded me of a chapter house. And if you could kind of just tell us what Congress is really like, because I want our brothers to realize that that's the way the world works. What they deal with every day is the way the world works.
I get frustrated about the image of Congress because what you see on network news, on social media, I don't think that represents Congress at all. Truth of the matter is, there's a middle class in Congress like there is in the real world, in both parties. Really solid people trying to do the right thing, working to represent their districts that are just dramatically different, from each other, but they are trying to find common ground. And the truth of the matter is, I wish I could introduce America to that middle class because I think you would have more confidence in your Congress because they are the ones that get things done. And when I say middle class, I'm not talking about moderates. I'm talking about people who are, like me, very, very conservative, and those who are very, very liberal, who decide they are going to find common ground and find some solutions. That's where almost all the solutions come from, is that middle ground. And the reason you don't know about them is they don't do outrageous things. They don't say outrageous things, or they're working. And I just think there is a foundation there. I didn't leave Congress because I was disheartened or discouraged or anything. In fact, I have a lot of confidence in the men and women who were there. It's just the frustrating thing is, the margins are so tight between each party. It only takes 4 or 5 to pull that car into the ditch, and they spend a lot of time in the ditch. But there's a lot of good people who are trying to figure out a way to get that government moving and solving some things.
That sounds to me like mini chapters. It only takes 4 or 5 to take this amazing organization led by men of character and virtue and cause it to stumble. So my guess is then you were put in numerous situations where you were asked to do something or asked to vote for something that went against what you believed was right or what you believed was best for your constituents. And how did you work through that? What was your process?
Yeah, so I learned this lesson early on, Texas House, because I had been there maybe 2 months. There was some bill that came up, and I didn't like it at all, but it was really important to the party. And a lot of pressure. Kevin, you just got to vote for this thing. You've got to vote. You can't let the team down. And I did. I voted for it. I knew it was the wrong vote. I didn't like it. And then I went home that weekend, and again, I always did a lot of town halls. So I spent, all Saturday going to 6 town hall meetings, having to defend a vote I did not believe in. I decided I'm not doing that again. I'm just not doing that. I would rather take the heat for something I believe in, however much that hurts you, than accept something you just don't believe in. And so the way I always tell people, because they'll ask, what do you do if your beliefs are different than what your voters want? Now, how do you do it? And what I decided was that my job title is representative. Literally, my job's to represent my district. But it's not to represent the opinions of my district, it's to represent their interests. Sometimes they're completely different. Those are the hard times, by the way. And so my approach was, look, on every big issue like that, first do your homework, make sure you understand what that bill does in pro and con. Secondly, listen back home, get those views from everyone. And then thirdly, apply my values. And even if it was different than the opinions of my district. And my thinking was, if I do that, do my homework, listen to my constituents, apply my values, that look, over time, if the constituents disagree with that approach, they'll find someone else to do it. But in the meantime, I was able to vote my values. Sometimes it cost me dearly politically. As a conservative, remember the bailout, in 2010? So many people contributed to that problem. But at that moment in time in our economy and history, things were going south fast. The market was all over the place. People were losing, 25% of their retirement, like in days. Something had to be done. I voted for that bailout, which later, by the way, they paid back. But bottom line is, I lost probably 25 to 30% of my voters on one vote, and I'm not sure I ever got them back. I still believe I did the right thing, you know what I mean? And I will tell you, the reason I really enjoyed Congress, I took a lot of joy from that job, is that if you're voting the right way and taking the heat for it, it's a great job. I would rather do that any day than what I experienced early on, which is trying to explain, defend something you just don't believe in. So yeah, that was the approach that I don't know if that's the right or the wrong approach, but for me, that was where I could keep my integrity, vote my values, try to do my best job. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you got to.
As somebody who lived through 2010, I want to say thank you.
Yeah, well, a lot of stuff got saved by that. So.
We're talking about acrimony, and we're talking about a lot of the people with different opinions coming at each other. And many of our brothers are living through that on their campus today. And we were talking about, surprisingly, many of your friends in Congress were from the other party, and that most people in Congress actually get along. So what advice can you give us as Lambda Chi's? What should we do to try to bring a spirit of civil debate and camaraderie to our campuses?
It's not easy these days. Things are just, they go south, and they're painful, and they're brutal, and they're ugly fast. So the culture I tried to instill at the Ways and Means Committee among our Republican members was, look, wake up every day working to stop bad ideas, because Washington, D.C. is full of bad ideas. But wake up every day, work equally hard to find common ground. If you do both of those things as hard as you can, you will do your job for your district and state, but for the country as well. So we were always looking for common ground among our Democrat colleagues. I remember asking John Lewis, the civil rights icon, to work with Lynn Jenkins, accountant from Kansas, to redesign the IRS. After we put in a new tax code, my belief was we need a new tax collector. So I asked both of them to work together, which they did over time. A bill that redesigns the IRS, President Trump signed it, but then COVID hit. The thing's probably still on a shelf somewhere. We did that over and over within our committee, looking for pairing people who could find common ground and solve issues. And I'm proud of that work. I think on a campus, a couple thoughts. It is incredibly hard to change someone's opinion, much less their beliefs. So just know, in a disagreement, the chances of changing their views are probably pretty small. You can't control it. What you can control is the relationship with that person. I decided early on I was not going to lose friendships over politics. I don't care if it's family, my neighbors, opponents, whatever, whoever's chewing me out at that moment. I just decided politics was not more important than those relationships. And I will tell you, when you want to have that civil discourse, if you will take the extra time to build a relationship or just be respectful, make your case respectfully, listen to theirs, you'd be surprised how often you might find common ground. I think the key, and I tell new members of Congress this, in both parties, including my own, which is in these debates, you only get defeated if you give up on your own principles. And in politics, it's easy, because if someone else is lying, I guess you can lie too. Someone else is bending the rules, or cheating, or creating new rules, well, I guess you can do that too. And if someone's personally ugly and really going low, well, that gives you an excuse to do the same thing. No, it does not. In fact, that's the problem today, is social media is so ugly and so vile and so harsh, and people think they're scoring big points. Truth of the matter is, the only way we turn that around is if we as individuals take a different approach, whether it's on social media, on campus. There's a way to do this. And the other thing I've learned in politics, it gets pretty ugly pretty fast. And I just determined I was not going to carry any of that hateful stuff around with me in my life.
In here?
Yeah, it poisons your heart. And the other thing is, so my mom, besides raising five of us, she headed the local humane society. So every time we go out to school in the morning, there'd be a box of puppies on our porch, or cats, like, Mom, puppies. And so one Sunday night, I come downstairs, there's a monkey in our front room. I'm like, what? So I start, this couple had a monkey. They were trying to get it to Sioux Falls, and they missed the flight. So they find Mom's house, and they bring the monkey to apparently slumber party at our house on Sunday night. So I start walking toward the monkey, and they said, stop, and like fearfully. And they said, you don't understand. Monkeys they're vicious, they're mean, they're dirty, and they are so strong, they will snap your finger off. First time I really thought about that. So what I decided, as you get attacked in politics, social media and all that, when people, they offend you, they insult you, they, degrade you, they're hoping they can hand you this monkey of anger, and that you'll feed it, that you'll wake up the next morning thinking about what they said, that you'll carry it around with you in your heart and on your back. And I decided a long time ago, keep your damn monkey. I'm not hauling that thing around with me. Whatever you said ugly, it just isn't, I'm not feeding it any longer. So that seems like a simple analogy. When we tell high school students that, they're pretty skeptical about the whole thing. But the point being, you choose. If you're going to feed that type and go back and do more of it, don't do it.
Well, I want to give our students an opportunity to ask you some questions. But before I do, I want to ask you one last question. And that is, if you could go back and sit down with 22-year-old Kevin, who's graduating and walking into the world, what advice would you give him to help him live his best possible life?
Besides, you should have studied harder and got better grades. Yeah, apparently, I was really involved in there. I played baseball, Lambda Chi, Interfraternity Council, student government, all that stuff. Apparently, I didn't let the classroom get in the way of my education at the University of South Dakota. And I wish that were different. I'm not proud of that at all. I studied really hard my last couple of years. I didn't early on. But if I could go back, and if I could give that advice to you, I would tell you to make one decision before you leave Phoenix this weekend. I would tell you to make another decision before you leave school. And then I will tell you how your life will end up. So on the first one, decision I would make is, what kind of life am I going to choose to live? Is it one of transactions for you, or is it a transformational life? And the reason I say this was, I was up at a Catholic boys' school in Detroit here recently that we're helping build and grow. And Nick Saban, one of the greatest college coaches of all time, was speaking to these young men. And he made the point that he used to be a transactional coach. Even when he was at Michigan, you know, if the team was going great, the games were going great, he was happy with the team, happy with the coaches, happy with his family. If they weren't, it was just the opposite. And so they were headed to play Ohio State, which was undefeated or something. They didn't have a chance. He met with a friend, happens to be a psychiatrist, who said, look, I think you're going about this all the wrong way. You're just looking at this as transactions. You have to be transformative. And the point he made to him is, you've got to show these young men how they succeed, not just on the field, but off the field. How they become better people, not just at school, but for their life. You've got to set example and start showing them how they hold themselves accountable, make themselves a better person. Don't worry about the results. Do every play, every day you're better. And so Nick Saban changed the way he coaches. And I was there at the university and watched this process, and it is true. He decided to focus on those young men, to be a role model to them, to show them how to be successful, to show them how to hold themselves accountable. Not the coach, not your parents, yourself accountable to grow. And he said, I was a good football coach before that. I was successful. What you know about me was when I became a transformational coach. And I think every person in this room, as a young man, has to decide, are you living a life for you, transactional, or for others? Leo Roston, this author, says something I think is really true. The purpose of life is not to be happy. The purpose of life is to matter, to be productive, to have made a difference that you lived at all. I think, my guess is, you didn't come here to Phoenix, 6 miles from the sun, apparently. You didn't come here looking to network, be more successful. What's in it for me? You came here because you want to matter and make a difference in your chapter, with your brothers, probably in your life. So before you leave this weekend, make that decision about what kind of life you want to live, because one is so much more fulfilling than the others. The decision you make before you leave college is, am I going to bring my brothers with me on my journey through life? And I would recommend you do. And I don't mean your whole chapter brothers, your friends, your closest one. Make a commitment before you leave school. You're going to share this journey of finding that first job, getting married and having a family, all the tough parts of life that occur, all the way, your journey of faith, all the way through retirement. There's nothing better than sharing it with your brothers, because this is an enduring friendship. And I got lucky, because I was with Lambda Chi with Brad Gullickson, who was the ultimate leader of our fraternity and share. But we've shared our lives together. It makes the journey fantastic. And the final point about, I can tell you where you're going to end up. And there's a lot of people here I think would echo this. All your life, ups and downs, good times, mistakes, harshness of times, at one point in your life, we will all end up in the same place. And you'll realize the only thing that matters, your faith, your family, and your friends. Not the car you drive, not the house you live in, not the career you've had, nothing. You will find there's only 3 things that you will gravitate to and value. I wish I'd have known that in Congress. I would have lived my life differently. You know what I mean? Because everything fades away. And knowing that at age 22, I would have valued things differently if I'd known at the end of the day, at some point, everyone's going to say, that's the only thing that matters.
Well, amen. And thank you, Brother Brady.
Welcome.
I would like to give our brothers an opportunity to ask the Congressman questions. I believe we have mics posted around. If you have a question for Brother Brady, you just raise your hand and we'll bring a mic to you. The only questions you can't ask about are UFOs.
I promise it's not a UFO question. Congressman Brady, my name is Keith Stubblebine. I attended the University of Tennessee. I studied political science. As the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, you had one of the most fascinating and influential positions in the federal government that involved engaging with countless stakeholders. You touched on this some earlier, but I'm curious to learn about your balancing of both being liked and respected to both be electable and also lead once in office.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I love tax reform only happens once a generation. It's pretty difficult to do politically, economically, financially. When the world's largest economy rewrites this whole tax code, man, a lot of people get upset, and there's just a lot of challenges. It was a great challenge for me in 2017. The approach I took was one: if it's worth doing, you got to prepare. So we worked 8 years, the Ways and Means Committee, with Chairman Dave Camp, Chairman Paul Ryan, then myself, to be ready when a president opened the door. President Trump did, and we dove through it. Secondly, you got to build that team. You got to have people you respect, that you listen to, that are part of this, because at the end of the day, if you're going to build a new tax code, you got to have people buy into it. So we spent a lot of time listening, being respectful. I briefed Democrats, union leaders, groups that I knew would never support it, but needed their input. I needed to know where there was some common ground, even if they weren't going to vote for it. The other thing is, when you have really big challenges, you're going to want to manage everything. Truth of the matter is, just manage yourself. Just manage yourself. Stay calm, stay level-headed, know there's great days, know there's bad days. Manage yourself. And at the end of the day, my goal for tax reform as a leader was to be an honest leader who could earn trust. And by that I mean listening, and if you couldn't do something, to be able to tell people no. And if you could do something, to tell them, I think we can do it. But what I learned is the more honest you are about that, the more trust you engender, and the better chance you have of pulling people together on big issues. And I'll finish with this. Most big challenges, you have to convince people to believe in it, especially if it rarely gets done. I spent a lot of time making my staff members, the public, believe that we could do this. And so, yeah, I learned a lot of lessons during tax reform. It was a great challenge. And I think there's a whole lot of challenges in our lives we can apply those same lessons to. Did that answer your question, Keith? Yes, sir.
Do you think 22-year-old Kevin would have gotten excited about tax reform?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely. Didn't earn enough to pay taxes much, I think.
Any other questions from our brothers?
My name is Brother Brady. My name is William Bell. I attend the University of Georgia.
Oh,
How did you manage meeting deadlines in Congress when it's an environment where you're constantly kind of in conflict and you're struggling to get things done in a timely manner?
That is a great question, because unfortunately, the way Congress works is if there is a deadline at midnight, like a harsh deadline where bad things happen, they start working on it about 11:30. I mean, that's literally, they'll talk about it for decades, and they're like, whoa, we got to get something done. And then you see the rush. It is no way to run a railroad at all. So on Ways and Means Committee, we started way early, even if it was just laying the foundation, getting people together, just doing the hard work to prepare, you know what I mean, and educate others for it. That helped us reach those deadlines better, I think, than some committees. Sometimes we didn't. We failed in that stuff. But yeah, you've got to start early, and you've got to start bringing people together early, because if you'll listen to them, one, you'll often get better ideas, help you solve this problem. But two, they're more likely to be there when things get tough politically, hold together, make tough votes to get things done, because if it is worth doing, it's going to be a tough vote. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
If it's important, start early.
Right here.
Thank you, Brother Brady. My name is Adam Annette, and I am representative of the Iota Sigma Zeta at Valparaiso University. My question would be, based on how much time you've had to work with so many different people, and kind of in conjunction with the previous question, is how do you keep people accountable when they fall short or when they are unable to make the deadlines or make the promises that they've kept? I know as brothers, we have an increased sense of trust with those people, but sometimes eventually they fall through on those.
Yeah.
And what advice would you have to help?
Yeah, so praise publicly, admonish privately, because at the end of the day, your relationship with them will do more, if it's positive, if it's a good one, will do more to help them reach that deadline than criticizing them publicly in front of the chapter, any of that stuff. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Holding people accountable in a general sense is good. I'll tell you, there's nothing better than putting up on a board everyone, who's met their points and did their job, whether it's the officers or the chapter members themselves or preparation for a big event. Always helpful to sort of see how you're doing compared to others, but from a criticism and admonishment standpoint, that's something as a leader you do one-on-one or a small group. It's the only way to help people. And I've had it done to me, including at Lambda Chi. When as High Gamma, I wasn't hitting some of our deadlines, on reporting requirements. My High Alpha came to me and said, hey, we got to have this every report. And we didn't miss them after that. So yeah, as a leader, keep that relationship, do it privately. Does that make sense?
And remember that, brothers, this afternoon when we take up the legislation about the gamma position. Brother Brady, I want to say thank you. This morning we got to see our initiation ritual exemplified. We got to learn about the values, the beliefs, the symbolic lessons of our fraternity, and to get to see a man who took them to heart and used his life to make the world a better place for other people is an example to us all. And I would like to say, on behalf of Lambda Chi Alpha, thank you.
Thank you, Troy. Appreciate it.